I'm going to show you this side by side. So if I push the test button will trigger that PLC bit on. If I hit the reset bit immediately comes on. Now you see that little lag and delay, and that lag and delay is all that VBA code having to run, and then it triggers this actual bit, right? So if I trigger that on, you see it comes on, and if I hit the reset, it resets it. Alright, so in this video we're going to show a brand new application from scratch, how to do VBA code to talk directly to a PLC file and to write data to it, right? And then actually be able to reset it and everything. Now, with that being said, this is a brand new implementation, so we will be using brand new screens. I'm actually going to make a new screen right now. And then what we're going to also do in this atmosphere is we're going to make our couple tags. Now, first I'm going to make a tag. I'm going to call this tag, we'll just call this VBA test, and then we'll make this a digital tag, which is perfectly fine. We're going to make it a memory tag though, so just keep that in mind. Alright, and then we'll have another one where we can have it reset something, but in this case we'll just have this one right now. So to keep in mind, we're under HMI tags, and we made an HMI tag called VBA test, and we're only going to use this inside of the HMI. Alright, so with that said, let's go in here and look at that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come into our screen, and we're going to do our numeric display. I'm going to do a numeric display right here, and then we're going to use that tag that we just made. Okay, we're going to utilize that tag that we just made. Now what we're going to do is over here we're going to change the name of this. Okay, so I'm going to change the name of that to, well, so it's something that we can easily define and see inside of our VBA code without having to look for display numeric display number 1. We can say something like VBA Code Trigger, right? We can say something like that, and then that way it has some kind of information that we can easily see. Now what we're going to do here, and I'll show you this, is you're going to come over here, you're going to have to come over to this the property panel, and you're going to have to expose to VBA code. So you're going to change this section down here, you're going to change this to VBA Control. Alright, so that's pretty simple, right? Now one thing too is you can also change the font, like change the fonts and stuff like that. If you want to change the height, we'll change this to maybe a 14 so you can see it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to obviously come in and change this, the value of this. We're going to come in and change it with a button. Now inside of that button, what I want to do real quick is show you. We're going to come in and add a button, and we're just going to call this a button, and we'll make it just this big so you can see it. And what we're going to do is we're going to say trigger, or let's just call this VBA test. Not a big deal what we call it. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to do a press, and I'm going to do a set. You can do toggle if you want to, but personally I like to do a set. And I'm going to set that value of this bit. I'm going to set that to a 1. Then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do a pause, and then I'm going to drop down a line, and I'm going to come down here and set that same bit. Okay, I'm going to set that same bit to a 0. Okay, so I'm going to set it to a 0. Alright, so now all we're doing is when we push that button, we're setting that bit to a 1, that memory bit to a 1, and then we're going to set it to a 0. It's that simple. Okay, so we're going to do that. Now that's going to trigger this bit up here. Okay, now keep in mind we're going to utilize this stuff. We're going to save this screen. We'll call this VBA testing. Not a big deal. That way we save it. Now, before we do anything further, what I want to do is I want to open up the PLC file that we don't have any logic in whatsoever right now. There's 0 tags. You can see there's 0 tags in here. Alright, so I want to add a rung, and I'm going to use this on a emulator. So I'm going to add a rung though. I'm going to come in and do a seal-in circuit, so you can physically see this stuff working. Okay, so we'll do a seal-in circuit real quick, and we'll call this VBA. We'll call this from VBA from PLC. Okay, and then we're going to say VBA reset okay, and this is going to be VBA received. That simple. That much of a seal-in circuit. Really simple. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to download this to our processor, which we have in slot 15. We have this in slot 15. Again, we're going to slot 15 right here. Okay, we're going to download that, and this is just to get the code the code we're going to work with the actual VBA code. Okay, so we haven't programmed the VBA code just yet, but we're working towards that. Okay, just keep that in mind. Alright, so let's download this code. Alright, and this is very simple. Obviously this is very simple ladder logic. I just want to get the code up and running so that when we do our set tags and we do everything, it's that simple. We can see it working. Alright, so change the controller here. Let's go ahead and change the view so you can see it a little bit better. Change the view right there. Now you can see it nice and big. Alright, so real quick, we need to set our communication path. Let me do my communication path. Before we get in the VBA code, let's add a communication path, and we'll call this VBA PLC. Okay, and then let's do an underscore so we keep it simple. Alright, so let's come over here and tag this down to our, and let's have this auto start browsing so it finds our last, there we go, finds the last one, and then we'll go ahead and verify these. That adds our shortcut to our application. Alright, so this is good. Alright, so we need to make basically a macro real quick. So we're going to make a new macro, and this will all make sense in just a second. So we're going to double click right quick, and that brings up our prompt again. Our prompt comes up here, and then we're going to do a set, and then we're going to come over here, and then we're going to refresh our tags. Refreshing our tags will now have our new shortcuts that we have set in our data server, and this will give our tags in here. Okay, so we're going to set this, which is VBA from PLC. We're going to set that to a value of 1. Okay, then we're going to pause for 1 second, and we can just copy this if we want to keep it simple, or we could double click again and then set the same thing, set it back to 0. That's all we're doing, set it back to 0. So this is again the VBA from PLC. We're setting it to 0. So essentially this is all temporary data, and then we'll close this and name this something simple. So we'll just call this VBA macro. Okay, so we're going to use this in just a second, the VBA macro. Alright, so now we've at the point where we have our macro in here and we have our testing. What we need to do to get everything working in here is we need to come over here. We have our exposed to VBA for our up here on our numeric display. Now what we're going to do is come over here and open up VBA code. I'm going to come in here. You can come over here to general. Alright, so general will generally have your display right here. Display right here is going to be, this is where you would add other VBA code. In our instance, we're going to change we're going to add our VBA code where it says change our VBA code trigger, and that's where we got that very first implementation. Remember, we called this VBA code trigger right here. That's where we can find that. Okay, this VBA code trigger. Now I'm going to add a section of code in here, so this would be real simple and easy for everybody. And we're going to add this in here. Populate that. Okay. Now this code right here, the way it works is it says on the, if it's an error handler, then it will populate the error inside of FactoryTalk Diagnostics. And in our case too, we need to change this from numeric display 1 obviously to trigger. So let me just make this a little bit clearer to you. If I were to back this up and I hit dot and it does not have a drop down, that means the tag is not there, or that means there is no element named that inside of the code. In this element, we know that we named it VBA trigger, so I'm going to come in here and replace that with that, and I'm going to hit a dot. Then I'm going to get the value. Okay. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Take that back. I'm going to paste that in there and do a dot value. So all I'm saying is if this is not an error, then I want to look at the value, and if the value is equal to 1, then I'm going to execute a command. What command would you think I'm going to do? In this instance, I'm going to trigger my VBA code. So I'm just going to go down here to rename. I'm going to copy. I'm going to cancel. I'm going to open up my VBA code again, and I'm going to paste that in here. So I'm going to trigger that. So if I hit that button and then it triggers this value to 1, then what it's going to do is it's going to trigger this VBA macro that we just did, and that VBA macro is going to set our bits high. I'm going to save that real quick. Okay, save that, and then what we're going to do is we're going to test this. So actually we have a compile error, and we're going to end sub. Let's take that out. Let's go over here and save that again. I had 2 end subs, so just so you know, that's why it went into error. Let's save that, and now let's test it. Alright, so currently we have a value of 0. Alright, now I want to actually pull this up so you see the bits over here are currently not latched in. Right, you see this is not latched in. So I'm going to hit that, press this button once. It's going to set this bit, and apparently it didn't set that bit. Let's make sure that that's working. I'm sure that if it did not set the bit, it did not work. So let's see why this is not setting the bit. Oh, there it goes. Might have been a slight delay inside of there. So we set the bit, we set it to once. Okay, so now we should have come up here and sealed that. Now the reason that happened is because, again, the little lag, but when you first build a system, there is a little lag in the system, especially when you're testing with virtual and simulation and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind. But keep that in mind. What I can do too is, if I wanted to, I can set this at toggle. Instead of set, I can use a toggle. I prefer to use set. If you're asking, if you're probably wondering yourself, what do you mean by a toggle? I could have went like this. I could have said toggle. I could have said toggle and then the bit, right? I could have said the bit toggle and toggle that bit. But all that's going to do is toggle that one direction or another. It's not going to give me the ability to cut it on and cut it off. I want the ability to cut it on right here and cut it off. So let me hold it for 2 seconds. Oh, I know what didn't happen. We didn't pause. We didn't have a pause in there. Let's hold it for 2 seconds. Okay. And now let's save. And this way you'll see it. See that transition come to 1? Alright. So now this is already there. Okay, so right now I have a reset where I have the toggle, right? That makes sense. So let me go ahead and do another favor. And let's go ahead and add another macro. Let's go ahead and add a new macro, and we'll call this one, we're going to do, if you can guess it, we're going to reset the actual command. So we're going to reset, and we'll go down to online, and we're going to do the reset, and we're going to toggle the reset on, and then we're going to pause for 1 second, pause for 1 second, and then we're going to double click again, get on to set again, scroll down to set, come over here, hit the reset again. We'll set the value of this at 0, hit finish. We'll save this and we'll call this I'll call this PLC reset, PLC data reset. Real simple, real easy to understand. Now I'll show you this. I don't actually have to read and write data. Let me just copy this and paste this again so that I keep the same format. I'm going to come over here and change this, and I'm just going to come over here and say set, and then come over here to macros and reset the PLC data. And that's what I'm going to call this. This is going to be VBA reset. Now I don't actually have to have VBA code triggered like I'm doing, but I'm showing you the way you can actually trigger. If I do a VBA test, keep in mind this button is triggering this tag. This tag in the VBA code is triggering the actual macro, and the macro is triggering the talk to the actual PLC data. Okay, so if we were to come over here and save this and run this again, you can see I can trigger that data on, that triggers that bit high, that triggers this in. Then if I go back onto here, I can reset that data. That then comes over here and resets the data, because that reset that trigger. Now that's again using two different methods. It's one to reset it, to set it and reset it. Now here's a lot of what happens with the numeric keys like this when they get used. When they get used, they normally go up here, open this up, and they go up here, and then they turn off the visualization, so you don't see them at all, and we don't know what's happening, right? So if I were to actually run this, and let's just say I made a client, I made a quick client off of this, I created a client, and I come over here and I just say let's just call this VBA client, and let's come over here and pick our application, VBA examples, and that's something that we just built from scratch, right? We didn't do anything until we started this video. We're going to go down to our screen, we're going to click next, we're going to populate a size perfectly fine like it is, and come over here and run it. Now I'm going to show you this side by side the PLC code, so you can see everything running side by side without me having to toggle back and forth between screens, because you get a better perspective that way. Obviously this is the actual trigger up here working with the tag that we made in the beginning, working with a numeric key or numeric display, and this is triggering that tag to go to a value of 1. We're using that value of 1 in the VBA code to say if that value is at 1, we want to trigger a macro. We want to trigger an event to happen. Now essentially we could call a tag like that, but again it's a lot cleaner when you call a macro. Tremendous much cleaner, right? Okay, so now we have our VBA code up here. I'm going to show you this side by side. So if I push the test button will trigger that PLC bit on. If I hit the reset bit immediately comes on. Now you see that little lag and delay, and that lag and delay is all that VBA code having to run, and then it triggers this actual bit, right? So if I trigger that on, you see it comes on, and if I hit the reset, it resets it. Now that's two different methods, one not using VBA, the other one using the VBA code. So again, I wanted to show you how to read and write data using VBA code and using a different method, right? So I know this video kind of ran long, but we built everything from scratch so you can see everything step by step, and how to implement this same exact theory of operation. Again, you do not see the numeric keypad up here or the numeric display. You don't see that. All you see is the fact of the system working, right? If I toggle that button, which does the memory tag, it triggers the event to happen. That event happens, and then we can come over here. We can even add another display in here to say, oh, by the way, you know, this did happen, right? But again, we can have this all interface with the HMI, but I think you get the point. You see how everything is working visually, seeing the PLC and seeing the HMI working as we just created a simple client in FactoryTalk SE. So with all that said, see you guys on the next one.